Good morning, friends and beautiful people. So I've been watching a lot of videos about, and I'm going to use air quotes, food shortages and what's causing them, where they're coming from. And I just wanted to, I did a presentation yesterday for a group of school districts that basically outlined where we were in the industry and what to expect for the coming school year, and ways to pivot and figure out alternative sources or solutions for what they're feeding the kids in school. And for the whole drive home, it really tugged on me that this would be a good video to do for you, because there's a lot of people putting videos out there that are kind of true, a lot of conspiracy theories and things like that. So I wanted to tell you from the industry standpoint what is going on with your food and what you should be concerned about. So if you would picture the food production as a spoked wheel, and to get you the food that you need, there are all different parts of that wheel that all need to come together so that they're able to deliver food to your grocery store, or in their case to their distributors, so that they could get product. And forgive me, I have my notes here from yesterday. Otherwise, I'm like a squirrel and I go off on rabbit trails, and none of us want that. So the first thing is weather. We all know weather affects food crops, so why is this any different? Well, this year we've had everything from a drought to floods to the forest fires and, all those things. And we've had them before. So why is this year different? Well, the drought has been so bad out in the Pacific Northwest that cattle farmers were unable to water their cattle. The state of California cut them off, and a lot of herds had to be culled early, thus creating not as much beef, and those farmers aren't going to run out and buy more calves to start raising them. So you've got that. Then you've got the drought conditions that caused some of my farmers to harvest peas, 2 to 3 weeks early. When you harvest produce in that quantity 2 to 3 weeks early, that means you're not going to have as many peas. I mean, frankly, it's, the weather's been hot, and you can probably tell that in your own personal garden. And then we have the ash clouds that are created from the wildfires. And while a lot of us look at the wildfire situation and think, yeah, that's probably going to burn up some crops, the crops that don't get burned up are the crops that are not going to ripen because of the ash clouds. A lot of tomatoes are grown in California, and those tomatoes cannot ripen with those ash clouds. It affects everything from blueberries to strawberries to grapes, to tomatoes. So those wildfires are something to be concerned about. What's not to be concerned about? Root crops. You've got in the Pacific Northwest, where those drought conditions are, your potato manufacturers are all digging up one time a year, and they're storing them in potato barns. And they're done in such a way that, they won't sprout roots, and that they'll hold up, and then they're used to make your French fries, or just sell to the grocery stores, or however they process in their area. So, potatoes probably aren't going to be affected as much. Then we go to the Ozarks, and the Ozarks have had flooding. While the flooding is going to affect crops, it's also going to affect your livestock, because the fungal infections that you are getting on your crops, of course, you know what happens if you get, fungus on a cucumber. You're going to lose the cucumber plant. But it also affects things like chickens. There's a lot of major chicken processors in the Ozarks who have to worry about, there are rules where they have to be allotted so much time where they're allowed to be outside, and those chickens are going to be subject to a fungal infection because of the muddy ground that is out there, unless they put them out on concrete. And then you also have the same thing happening with a lot of swine. There's a lot of swine that comes out of the Ozarks. So then we have the next thing is something that you probably not that familiar with, but I'm going to touch on it because it affects you. So schools are given commodity dollars, and those dollars are put towards commodity products, whether that be flour, cheese, vegetables, all of your different proteins, your turkey, your chicken, your pork, your beef, whatever those are. And if you're only allowed to have at the end of the school year a certain percentage of your usage left on hand. And if you have way more than that, the USDA comes in and does a thing called a sweep. And basically they take the product back, and you being the school district, lose the money. Well, during COVID, USDA had said, we understand things were weird this year. We're not going to do sweeps. We're just going to let everybody go. We know that your usage wasn't where it should be. It was hard to use your commodity products, so we're going to leave you alone. Then they changed their mind and they did the sweeps. So, for example, if you are a poultry processor and they swept 42 truckloads of product that was diverted to the USDA for commodities, then that's 42 truckloads of product that you're going to have in your warehouse that you just have to find another home for. So the processors became comfortable, and one particular processor canceled contracts with some of their growers because, frankly, they didn't think they needed the product, and then they did. And now we have chicken shortages because this processor is in a legal battle, and I think they're about to come to an agreement with the canceled contracts. So once that situation is taken care of, I'm trying to be really careful about my words, once that situation is taken care of, I'm sure that they will be able to extend a hand, or someone will be able to extend a hand to those growers and begin processing and growing out poultry again. I don't know for sure, but if those growers had a non-compete agreement where they grew for company X and they're in this legal battle with them and aren't growing for them, they can't go out and grow for company Y. I don't know that that's the case, but I do know that it is very common in the industry. So that could be, in my opinion on that one, partially what is affecting the issues with poultry right now. The next thing we're going to talk about is production. And this is going to tie into all of the spokes of the wheel. So production, when I'm talking about that, I'm talking about the employees. Where we used to have like a small town, we'll use Arkansas again just because we already did, a small town in Arkansas where everyone works at the same food manufacturing plant. Now all of a sudden, we don't have that climate anymore. Once the thing hit and we had people calling off, no one's wanting to go back to work. No one wants to be in that environment anymore. And it was easy with stimulus monies and extra monies added to our unemployment and the moratorium we had on evictions and foreclosures, that we were able to just stay home and find other ways to make money. So we could make money from home, we could drive for Uber, we could go to a fast food chain and maybe work for, $15 an hour and get a stimulus check from them for coming to work for them. But what happened was these workers saw a new freedom, a freedom to create their own schedule. And all of a sudden, being in a warehouse plant where you can't come and go as you please, and being able to go to soccer games and schedule all of your work around that became more appealing. Plus we had homeschool. Plus we had to do all the things that we wouldn't have ordinarily had to do. And a lot of manufacturers are saying that they don't see that manufacturing side coming back to where it used to be. The people who they thought would, start knocking on their doors once all of these stimuluses and the moratoriums ended, they thought they would have a line at the doors of people wanting to come to work, and they just don't have it. So they're cutting lines. They're cutting, so maybe it takes 45 people to run a line and only 23 show up. You can't run that line. So then we're having to cross-train the people we do have and get them on those lines and get them up and running. And so what a lot of manufacturers are doing is they're cutting their SKUs. And what I mean by that is, well, here's a good example about Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola said, we're going to pick our top X number of products. That's what we're going to focus on. And some of those newer items, or some of those items that don't have the movement, we aren't in a position where we have enough people to manufacture that, so we're going to temporarily suspend production, if not discontinue production. So you're seeing that with everything from burgers to, and that would be like, in my industry, like a pre-made burger that is already cooked and ready to go for the districts. There was a lot of options before. You might have had 50 options available for a burger, and the burger company is going to come back and say, all right, we're going to produce our top 10. Those other items we're going to temporarily suspend, and if things turn around on that production side, we'll bring them back. But for now, we're just going to temporarily suspend them, focus on what we have enough employees to do. And folks, that is across the board. Every one of our manufacturers are doing that. Every one of them is crying about not having people to work on the production lines, to work on the docks, to take orders. I mean, it's across the board. And there's just a lot of that employee side of it and this was the whole purpose, I think, for my having to give the talk that I did, because all everyone kept telling the schools was that it's an employee problem. We don't have enough employees. There's a lot more to it. So then we're going to go to packaging. I don't know if you heard about the plastic plant in China that blew up, but China supplies us with a lot of our plastic, and all that plastic is used for packaging. You can't just go out and rebuild a new plant real quick and get that going again. So if the manufacturer can get the product, if the manufacturer can get enough people on the line to produce the product, they might not have a package to put it in. Again, it's all this part of these spokes of this wheel, and every single one of them has some kind of a crack or ding in it that's given us a bumpy ride. So another thing that happens with that packaging is it has to go through a port, and that's going to take us into the next thing we're going to talk about, and then we'll go back to wood shortages. So we get all these containers in. I'm going to use just one port as an example, but they all come into New York, and there is a railway that goes from New York to Chicago that supplies most of the Midwest, whether it's on the manufacturing side, the distribution side, whatever part of this spoke or whatever part of this system that you are in, that railway is the railway that goes from New York to Chicago. The New York port has cut the dock appointments in half for people to upload or offload their containers because they don't have enough dock workers. They don't have enough people to unload those trucks. So now manufacturers or distributors have all of their product sitting out at sea, and they can't get it. And there was even a discussion yesterday. There was a guy who dumped the container that he was hauling and went back to China to get another load because it was more lucrative, and he told the people he was hauling it for, file an insurance claim. I can make more money this way. Folks, you can't make some of this stuff up. And I can supply some links on the description of this video just to back it up. I don't have one for that, but it was a discussion that was had with one of the key manufacturer representatives. So before I go too much more into transportation, I do want to talk about the wood shortages because it ties in with this whole port thing. So we all saw all the wood pulp that was sitting down when we had the cargo vessel that was stranded, and there was all the wood pulp, and everyone all of a sudden became aware that a lot of our wood pulp comes from overseas. Well, that wood pulp is used for everything from paper to making some of the paper plates that are out there, to your to-go containers that you get your drinks in. Wood pulp is huge. It also is used to make the cardboard that is part of the packaging, that is part of the food supply system. So when lumber futures went way up, wood pulp became harder to get. And even as they're coming down now, We're seeing small decreases in the cost of wood, but not enough to help. So wood pulp is not as available. As a matter of fact, there are articles out there that you can Google where McDonald's can't get brown paper sacks for their to go. Another thing that wood shortage is costing us is pallets. We have to have pallets to put the food on, to put it on the truck to get it to you. And there's a pallet shortage. Some of the manufacturers have actually reached out to distributors and said, hey, if you have extra pallets, we'll buy them back. Usually they bill distributors for not exchanging pallets. So if you go in and you get 7 pallets of product, you have to give them 7 pallets or they send you a bill. And now they're saying, about that, we'll buy them back. We'll buy them back. Just bring them back. So you have the wood shortages affecting more than just the plywood and the 2x4s that you need to do in addition to your home. Now let's go back to transportation. So we've had everything from government regulations changing, increased demand, shortages, the pipeline shutdown. All of that is affecting transportation. But something else that's affecting transportation is we have a shortage of truck drivers, of over-the-road drivers. We saw a mass exodus of drivers when that thing happened in Portland, and then that went out to a lot of the urban cities. There were semis and trucks that were flipped over, that were attacked, that were vandalized, drivers were attacked, and a lot of them said, you know what, it's not worth it, I'm done. And so we had a mass exodus then, but not like we're having now. So what we have now is we have an over-the-road driver who is paid by the mile. And he gets to a distribution or a manufacturing facility and he can't get a dock appointment. Why? Because there's no workers. So he's sitting there for 3 days waiting for his truck to be unloaded. For those 3 days, he's not making money. So what once was a lucrative way to earn money by being a truck driver, an over-the-road driver, is now not so lucrative anymore, because you're getting paid for 2 days instead of 5 when you're out there, if you're looking at the mileage side of it. So that's another issue that has caused a lot of problems in that over-the-road industry. So even when you can finally get a dock appointment out at the port, you can't get it on the train because it's backed up. And so the manufacturers are out there looking to find an over-the-road driver. Fine, we'll just get an over-the-road driver, they'll bring us our container. Well, there's a shortage of them. So all of these things, all of these spokes are still getting more and more little splinters and more little dents in them, and it's causing a lot of stress on the industry. Another thing that has happened is the petroleum. So when those petroleum spikes went through and we did close down the pipeline, and we started to get a lot of petroleum from overseas and causing more issues with petroleum and the petroleum going up. That is a huge factor in why you saw a lot of inflation. Petroleum is used to make plastic products. It is used to make foam products. It is used, for the over-the-road drivers. There are so many places that we don't even think about where that petroleum becomes an issue, that it affected what we are now seeing as major inflation. Okay. So, I'm not going to go into a lot of these other things because these were pretty much pretty specific to the industry. What I will tell you is I recommended that if a district buys 3 weeks worth of food at a time, maybe now they should buy 6 so that they have more time to pivot, more time to respond to what's going on. There are a lot of the industry is saying that some things aren't going to go back to the way they were. And for example, the chicken industry, we all know it takes 8 weeks to grow out a meat bird. So, those of us who have chickens are like, why is this such an issue? Why hasn't this been fixed? They're predicting that issue is not going to be fixed until spring of next year. So you're going to have a rough time finding wings, and your kids aren't going to get as many chicken nuggets in school this year. And that's just the cold hard facts of the matter. And if you're one of the moms who can't understand why your kid's not getting chicken nuggets in school because we have a lot of them complaining, that's why. There's no chicken to make the nuggets. Sorry. So what do I do? And how do I turn this into a positive? We here, and anyone who's watched a lot of our videos know, we try to be as sustainable as possible. I work full time, and I still am out here, plus I have my shop. I'm still out here trying to garden, trying to raise chickens, trying to help the husband with the rabbits. We've got the bees. We've got all the things, trying to make ourselves less dependent on that food cycle, because that is broken. The food system is broken. I've been in it since 1986, and I can tell you it's broken. And I'll steal, again, a quote from someone else that is, the food system's broken, and I'm part of the movement to fix it. So I'm trying to take my part of it, my stress on that system out, trying to do all the things that I could do that, obviously I can't grow coffee. I'm going to stock up on coffee. I am not in a position to grow grains, so I'm going to buy flour. But I would recommend that you do stock up on things, and I would strongly recommend that some of that are those things that you don't think about, like your foil, your PVC film. If you're someone who uses those things, or Ziploc bags, or styrofoam cups, or bowls, or plates, or whatever it is, stock up on those things, because DART has already said that they're going to have 20% increase now, but over the course of the next year, it's going to be 68% increase. They're no longer going to manufacture school lunch trays. There's no money in it. They're going to go where they're able to make money, and where, frankly, if they don't have enough petroleum, or they're having issues with ingredients, they are going to focus on those items that make them more money, and schools are not one of them. So the other thing I would say is give your school people a break, or give just an extra smile to someone who you know is in food service, because it is a tough time for them. I try to be a resource. I try not to be a doom and gloomer. I try to be a resource for you. I have really avoided trying to combine what I do as my big girl job with the videos that I do, but this one just kind of touched me, and I felt like I needed to put this out there. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message or put a comment below. I always read the comments. I appreciate the comments, and I will, as best I can, without naming names or throwing companies under a bus, I will do my best to explain what's going on. I'll also post some links. But Google's your friend. So if you have questions about what's going on at the docks, you can definitely Google that. You can Google to see who the producers are that are having issues with contracts with their growers. And you can also Google to see what effects the weather is having on some of these crops. So it's like I tell my Sunday school class, I used to tell my Sunday school class, I had teenage girls, and they would come in and lay legalism on each other. The Bible says you can't say that, you can't do this, the Bible says you can't do that. So they weren't allowed to do that anymore. They had to come at us with scripture and verse, and they had to do it in love. So I am telling you that everything that I've told you, unless I've mentioned that it is just my opinion, there are website links to back it up. But for YouTube's benefit, I will say that all of the things that I've talked about today on my video are of my opinion, and I hope you have a great day. Be blessed and be a blessing.